All right, Zig coming in on the top 10 of the show. We have Karen Haglof. Karen is a singer, songwriter, guitarist, and doctor who specialized in oncology and hematology. What? Yeah, pretty sweet. You might know her from the band of Susans. She's done work with Steve Almus, and now she is embarked on a solo career. Karen has a new album out. It's called One Hand Up. We're going to listen to the title track, One Hand Up, off the new album, One Hand Up. Karen Haglof, the album's One Hand Up. The song, One Hand Up, available everywhere June 14th. Yeah, this was a cool conversation. It was a cool, kind of perception to take of a music career interrupted by a medical career. And it was also really interesting to hear, the perspective of someone knowing when they needed to switch and refocus on what they want to do and then come back to it. So it's a full hero's journey. We're getting Campbell-y. If you dig what you hear, if you can rate, review, subscribe to the podcast and any of the podcast platforms, it helps me keep talking to cool guests like Karen and sharing their insight with you. So without further ado, this is my conversation with Karen. To get into it, the new album's amazing. I really like this.
You like it?
Yeah, it's a crazy blend of worlds.
It is crazy, right? It is kind of a crazy wild ride through the stratosphere, I guess.
Yeah, and that's because it started off. I'm like, okay, I'm getting some kind of country vibes, but then it
but then no,
it digitizes in a way where it's where are we going? Which made it really, really interesting. And I wanted to start off by asking about working with Steve Almus.
Oh yeah.
So you
yes.
Okay, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say. So you've known Steve for a while, yeah?
Oh geez, I've known Steve since Minneapolis in 1974, I would say, and then we moved out to New York together in a band called the Crackers, and the Crackers was a little power pop trio and then quartet, including Mitch Easter. He joined the band after a while. And that band, we played around the New York area and did some things up in Boston and DC, that kind of thing. But wasn't really a very long-lived project. And then I kind of segued off into kind of minimalist art rock, and Steve had his own projects, Beat Rodeo, etc. And I when I was starting to put stuff together again, which was about not quite 15 years ago now. And I had been out of music for a very long time. And I thought, well, who will know its way around? And clearly Steve would. So I kind of called him up out of the blue, and he was interested in what I was doing. And so, yeah, we put together, how many? 1, 2, 3 full lengths and an EP and a couple of singles. And then he got busy with his own record, which he put out in 2021. And so I didn't have him to hold my hand on this that much. I was doing this more on my own. So there may be a little bit of a different, kind of a vibe just related to different personnel. But, Steve's wonderful to work with. I mean, I will work with him again in a heartbeat if he's ever, if we have the time and the place at the same time.
He's definitely a master of his craft. I got to pick his brain a while back ago in 2021 when that album was coming.
Right, when Everywhere She's Been, that's a great record.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's interesting diving into that record, which is a pretty kind of Americana folk style record. And then you think of the Suicide Commandos and I
know. It's opposite end of the spectrum somewhat.
Right. But so being around because at that time you were in the Spitfires, right?
I was in kind of an almost all girl, cover band. We did a kind of hard rock and heavier covers, but also Leader of the Pack and My Boyfriend's Back, crowd pleasers from a girl group. And so we were not doing original material at the time that the Commandos were making their way, kind of starting the Minneapolis scene. I think really they were one of the forerunners of it. So
yeah, when they became a presence in the scene, did that kind of I guess as far as like writing your own music, because if you guys were covering stuff at the time, did that kind of like open that door?
Oh, absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, once the Commandos started opening, they played at the Blitz Bar, which was across the street from a place called the Longhorn, and the Longhorn became the go-to place for kind of the independent, original music scene with Flaming O's and Curtis A and the Commandos, of course, among others. And our goal or our aspiration in my band was to let's do our own material. We could do that. We could write songs, and so that was the aspiration, to kind of get off the road. We were playing the little ballroom circuit in the upper Midwest at that point, and be more Minneapolis based and write our own material.
God, were you sharing bills with the Commandos? Were you guys crossing at that time?
I don't know if we ever shared a bill. I mean, there was so many kind of, there would be nights at the Longhorn Bar where, one band would be starting the night and other people would come up and kind of sit in for a couple of songs here and there, or there might be three different bands in on the same bill. I don't think we may have shared a bill with the Commandos that I'm not remembering. I know, we played, and Steve played bass for a project of Jan King in mind when Spitfire kind of broke up, and the singer Jan King, who's a Chicago great singer, guitar player, and so we wrote some songs together and put some material together, and Steve played bass on some of it and helped us kind of do arrangements and that kind of thing.
What was that project?
We called it the Wad. The band was called the Wad, and it was Jan King on vocals and me on guitar, and Steve played bass, and a guy, Dave Phelps, was our drummer, and Mark Goldstein was the keyboard player. And we were fortunate enough to get a song on Big Hits of Mid-America Volume 3. We did the song Chains under our name, The Wad. And that's the only thing we recorded as that band. And then Jan went west and I went east, and, things kind of changed from there. But I did re-record that song myself a few years back, just because it's always been it's a pretty good song, I think. And Soul Asylum recorded it, and Jan recorded it, and it's been around a little bit. So, it's still making its way about.
So at that point, was that when okay, Steve is someone I can work with, like seeing how he can like orchestrate and kind of like help navigate your guys' ideas?
Back then, Steve was always a very strong leader. He was always a strong leader. He kind of had a sense of what he thought the direction should be and how we should go about doing things. And that was always one of his, it was his strong suit. I mean, he's really a good leader in that way.
So, and also, I guess at that point too, does the Crackers kind of form out of that project, out of the Wad?
The Crackers kind of formed out of, the Commandos was kind of, they were coming towards a breaking up mode, because Steve wanted to do other things. He wanted to move to New York. He wanted to do what we did in the Crackers, basically. And so, it was kind of like, it was very much a transitional period then. I mean, with the Wad, Jan and I both wanted to strike out from Minneapolis, but as I said, she went west, I went east. So we ended up not working together. And, I came to New York with Steve and with the drummer of Crackers, Jay Peck. We drove out one day to just see it. And the minute I got here, I knew this was the place where I wanted to live. So
it's definitely like so much busier. Like
it's a lot different. It's a lot different. Yeah.
And like, was it easy to kind of like get into the music scene?
Well, it started out pretty well. I mean, we were able to get some gigs right away, but we had some kind of unfortunate early personnel changes in that the keyboard player that we came out here with, Mark Goldstein, needed to go back to Minneapolis right away, and we were kind of at loose ends for a little while. But then, we played as a three-piece, power pop, and then got Mitch Easter to help round things out a little bit. And so, yeah, we were able to play the clubs in New York and, make a little EP with Mitch Easter in his drive-in studio down in North Carolina. And yeah, I mean, it was a nice time, but it was just it was, again, part of a transitional time. I mean, I was looking to do other things, and I think Steve was looking to go in a different direction. I mean, in terms of beat rodeo, and he does have he has a strong interest in lots of different musical styles, but he does, like kind of that Americana and the beat rodeo stuff. But yeah, Steve is very well versed in all that is music, I would say, much more so than I am.
It's always interesting, like that kind of transitional period. Like it seems like when you look back at stuff like that, like it happens so quickly. But also, I don't know. When I look back at transitional periods, I'm kind of like more fond of them looking back than being in them.
Yes, I would agree with you there. It was kind of torturous at the time. It's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And then it's kind of like somehow fortunate coincidences occur. Like a guy called me up and said, hey, Rhys Chatham, who's a minimalist composer, is looking for a guitarist, and he's going to have a guitar orchestra. And I got into that, pretty quickly. I mean, we played together once. He came over to my apartment and we jammed a little, and then I was in the band. And then, artist Robert Longo was putting together a group, and the same person kind of connected me with him. And so we were able to, make a little project for a short period of time in terms of his art rock kind of bent on things. And yeah, it felt like torturous at the time, because it's kind of like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
What direction am I going? What should I be doing? Oh my God. Why did we move out here anyway?
Yeah. Why am I here? Like, but it was cool having nothing to do some days, like.
Not in New York, it's not, because it's all expensive.
Yeah, that's true. I guess coming from like kind of a structured, like, background of guitar, jumping into like a freestyle kind of orchestra like that, guitar collection like that. Was it easy? Was it easy to kind of let go?
Oh, I actually found it so. And Steve is all, in more recent years, Steve has commented that, my guitar playing style changed after moving from Minneapolis. And actually, even before kind of getting into this kind of minimalist art scene, I was much more of a kind of standard Chuck Berry-esque lead person back then. And then became much more interested in overtones and polyrhythms and dissonant sounds after moving to New York. And that kind of fit right in with the minimalist composer art crowd. So it seemed like I was in the right place for me at that time.
Because it's really interesting, like when you kind of get like as far as guitar is concerned, there's kind of like that. This is a good guitar player. Like there's a lot of examples of like the standard in a way. I mean, there's a standard tuning. You know what I mean? Like it's pretty like set, and like if you don't know that, and like so I always found it interesting, like that kind of like the more you get into a thing, that kind of the letting go, the like the no wave, the like the minimalistic approach, the free jazz, like that becomes way more heady and thoughtful when you're like when you're minutely tearing it apart and trying to understand it and create it.
And it's, I agree. I mean, you really do. You find out it's like, oh no, this isn't just banging around. This is actually, there's some structure here. There's some thoughtfulness here. There's a kind of an underlying ethos that's going on in this direction. And you can't just like discount things just because you don't understand them or aren't privy to how things are working.
Right. Was like the no wave stuff going on too with the minimalistic
I met the band of Susan's people through Rhys Chatham,
Okay.
and so ended up playing. You know, Robert Post was in one of Rhys's groups, and Susan Stenger also played with Rhys, and I believe their drummer Ron Spitzer also did. And you know, the band of Susan's with three guitar players definitely had some personnel changes going on to kind of, you know, because yeah, I mean, three guitars is sometimes hard to keep in one place at one time,
Yeah.
but. Yeah, so that I guess I would kind of consider no wave, kind of grunge, kind of noise, kind of minimalist, kind of overlays, kind of shoegaze. I mean, it's a lot of different. It's hard to categorize, I think. But I don't really try and categorize stuff too much. I just kind of go, I like that. I think that's really cool, you know.
I think that to when like that's the way to do it, because then you get into all the cool projects, you know, like if you not trying to just being into it and being moved by it, like and not
Yeah,
putting up that barrier of I'm only a you know a whatever style player, I'm a jazz guy, I can't be here.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
guess
No,
when the Band of Susans came, did that start to feel like more of a okay, I have a direction here, a little more locked in?
it did feel like that. But you know, I mean, it was great playing with the Susans. The material's wonderful. The songs, you know, very, you know, very nice to be a part of all those overlays and part of Robert and Susan's thought process and the way they developed the music. You know, just I'm very proud to have been part of that group for the time that I was. But I was also kind of a transition time in my life where I was deciding, well, is this what I'm going to be doing now? Um, because basically I'm working in restaurants, which is fine. I mean, restaurant work is great, but it seemed like I was more of a restaurant worker who played guitar than a guitar player who worked in restaurants. And at that point, I decided I was going to head back to higher education. And so I couldn't really tour while doing that. The Susans, you know, went on, and I dropped out of playing for a good, you know, 15 years, really,
And
I'm going to
that's
say.
yeah, I mean, and that's got to be to one choose yourself and remove from this situation. That has to be kind of like, especially since it's something that was your whole existence until this decision. That had to be like a heavy choice to make. Like, can you talk about a little bit about that process of knowing that I'm doing the right thing by jumping into med school?
Well, yeah, jumping in is kind of what happened a little bit. But no, I remember very clearly I was cooking brunch at a restaurant one Sunday morning in my kind of early 30s. And I looked around and I remember very clearly thinking, you know, in 10 years, I don't want to be doing this. So what am I going to do so that I'm not doing this in 10 years? What kind of direction changes do I need to make? And it was at that point that I started to explore. You know, I quit college back when I was 18 to play in this Spitfire, this band Spitfire, and tour the Midwest basically. And so I kind of had to start from scratch. I got into Hunter College and did all the undergraduate. And through that experience, was thinking, you know, a medical field kind of was appealing in that is highly, highly interesting. You can make a difference with people. It's always something where you've got to keep learning and growing if you're going to keep at it, because there's always something new coming up. And, you know, I decided, well, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to try and get into medical school, which is pretty hard. But somehow I didn't think it would be hard. I don't know. Sometimes what you don't know is better. It's
Right,
better if you don't
right.
know things. You know.
Well, and also like people, I think when you're trying something earnestly, like kind of pick up on that too. You know, like they're like, oh, this person's really just figuring this all out on their own. You know, you kind of get like, as opposed to going in knowing like I need to know this, I need to say this. You know what I mean? Like it's a little. I don't know if people have a different perception or different like you have a different persona going into that. That may make you more appealing to want to teach. Like
Well, actually, some schools did make a big deal out of it. They were like, when I was interviewing, they were like, "Wow, you have an interesting background. You took a completely different pathway," and basically they felt like my people experiences and skills would be helpful. And then
Yeah.
other schools did not feel that way. They were like, "Well, you've wasted a lot of time doing things that didn't go anywhere. What are you going to do when you're bored with medicine?" It's like, whoa. Yeah. So some people were not nice, and some people were very, very, they were very, very encouraging and thought, I'd be a good fit. So, and I got in. So there you go. But I didn't get into one of those schools that was like, well, I don't know what you think you're going to do now.
Oh. But you kept going with it, and that's a huge I mean, to be able to zero in on this thing and be like, I'm just gonna do this, it takes a lot of dedication and a determination to figure your way around this, especially coming from a completely, because music in restaurant work to medical work is a huge different completely different world. And
Oh, well, but not really. If you
okay,
think about it,
all right,
on a certain level,
yeah,
think about the things that are in common with playing in a band and working in a restaurant and being a doctor and even being a truck driver. What do all these things have in common? It's an ever changing environment. And you are there and you are working when other people are not. And so there are some similarities. It's like, when you're working overnight in the hospital, it's kind of like you're there on your own, and it's a transient kind of population and situation. And that's the same with if you're out in a bar playing music, or in a restaurant cooking, or it's all kind of this kind of transient feel to it. And you're always working holidays and you're always working weekends. So on a superficial level, there are some certain things that are actually quite, I kind of felt like I was primed for in a certain way in these kind of superficial. It's like, yeah, weekends, what's the big deal? Not a big deal to work weekends. Overnight, not a big problem. So,
well,
but yeah, in terms of the focus, yeah, absolutely differently, because for medicine, yeah, it's a very, very heavy workload and a very heavy knowledge base to kind of master before you can get out there. And so that was, in a way, it was almost a relief to kind of go, okay, this is just what I'm doing. And, and I'm going to put everything else aside. And this is just what I'm doing. And I'm happy for the time I did it. I don't think I would not change going into medicine whatsoever. If anything, I might change, in anybody's 20s or early 30s, there's 6 months or a year here and there where, you really didn't get much done. I probably would have liked to have done this maybe 3 years earlier. There's plenty I wouldn't want to trade, but there are things that, did I really need to do that? No, we could have knocked that time off,
Right. But I guess that waiting time, that figuring it out, it needs to be there.
Yes.
But I definitely agree.
I often tell myself that, well, it had to happen that way.
'Cause it's interesting, coming from, because I studied music. I went to Cleveland State for music therapy, and the kind of medical, which is it's not as heady as far as the what you went into. It's not as heady as that. There is plenty of fact-based stuff you have to know, and but to kind of circle it back in after hearing what you were saying, it very much is this, because going into just, you have to know these facts of how music works before you go play music, and it's a smaller pool of knowledge, I think, than going into a medical field, right? It's mostly how your instrument works and some theory. But it's still a prerequisite of knowing what to do before you hit the stage. And I kind of feel to some degree, there is a little bit of performance or code switching. You become this personnel that's on stage when you walk into this room. You
Yeah.
know, like
Hmm.
I gotta
Yep.
imagine, right? Like I'm here to deliver this type of information in
Oh
this
yeah.
type of
Yeah.
manner, and I don't want to
Uh-huh.
have this type of cadence or this type of worry or this type of like, you know what I
I
mean?
don't want
Like,
to. I don't want to impart this panic that I see. Yeah, there's definitely. Yeah, you end up using a persona, and being on stage is helpful for that.
and like, and also just kind of like the continue ed part. That's what I was gonna say. Like the kind of the endless kind of
You
growth.
you
Yeah,
you got to stay on it. You have to stay on it. It's just it changes every day.
like which is. I mean, like, which is in music, it makes I can really understand that, you know, it makes sense. You're like, you landed this phrase. There's so many minute things, but like in a medical field, like what have you
I mean,
noticed that's changed every day, like for
well,
you?
I mean, it's been it when I mean, I retired about 9 months ago, but
Oh,
in
congratulations!
the thank you in the space of that time, when I was practicing, which was 20 plus years, I mean, there's been a whole sea change in the way um, kind of the medical profession looks at people who are hospitalized. I mean, in the way management decisions are made is different. So that's on one level. On the kind of the treatment level, which by far is the most interesting and exciting. I mean, there's been much more of a development of molecular based treatments and decision making. As we get to know the different factors that go into causing disease states, in certain situations, and we find out the mutations that go with that, and find drugs that can actually, alter those states. I mean, that's completely, not that was not here 25 years ago, and so it's really getting to more of a personalized medicine um, experience than ever was before.
That's fascinating, and like,
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's new drugs, there's new antibody treatments coming out constantly, and it's so many trials, clinical trials based on trying to determine what is the best regimen for a certain disease state, and that's always a moving target. Things just it's always a learning process and always a growing process, and so it's really really compelling.
did you do any type of like research in this stuff? Like,
I did,
yeah,
yeah, no, I did a year of bench research as part of my fellowship, but it was really at the molecular level, and it was not my forte at all. I was like, I got to get out and talk to people.
yeah, yeah,
I'm,
yeah.
I'm not much of a lab person, I don't think so.
It's a
Although at one time I thought I was going to be, and then I was like, I was wrong. You find out things, and you go, no, I'm wrong.
But I mean, well, that right there, I think's a huge, like, kind of like thing of your character is that you are willing to do things and try things like that. And there's a lot of people that aren't willing to kind of make that jump. You know what I mean? Like, and learn what works for them and what doesn't work for them. I feel like a lot of people stay stagnant and like, but that's a super, you
Yeah,
know.
you got to be willing to have egg on your face from time to time. You got to go, okay, I'm just going to try and put it out there, and we'll see what happens. And but yeah, I mean, it seems like people have more regrets over what they didn't do than what they did do. So
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
soon keep it that way as well.
uh, I think on that, like the research end of it's really fascinating and exciting when you read about it, and you're like, oh, all these cool things. But then when you go to do it, I feel like it's like how you're saying the environment's very controlled, and like,
Yeah, it's a little different. Yeah.
and like, do you think? So I guess I'm bringing that up. Do you think that kind of comfort to try things and like willing to go out there and fail to your liking of it, like, or fail to your expectation of it, do you think that kind of stems from music?
Let me think. Where would that have come from? Um, yeah, I guess I always thought that. Yeah, I guess really the I got a lot of kind of of gratification from being able to get into medical school. And that kind of gave me more nerve, I think, to try things.
Okay. Well, yeah, it
You
should.
know, because it's like, you know what? I tried to do this thing that's really hard and I managed to do it. And it's like, well, what the hell? I might as well just try to do whatever I feel like I should do in this life for myself, you know, that doesn't hurt anybody. And you know, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I think, you know, taking that big kind of leap of faith to like, okay, I'm going to try and do this thing that people are telling me I'm probably not going to be able to do because, you know, I don't fit the right profile, but I'm going to try it anyway. And if it doesn't work, then something else will come up. So I would say, you know, music probably has something to do with it because this is a little free form. And there was several years where, you know, you just kind of were winging it a little bit in terms of financially and you know, what's the arc of my life going to be. But I think really going into medicine and seeing that, you know, what the triumphs and the failures could look like was instrumental.
Well, and I think that that's super inspiring just to be able to like analyze that, see where you want to do it, try it, make it or miss it, you know, and like for in your story to come through it and punk rock your way through into med school, you know, is really inspiring.
Yeah, there were a few of us. There was like a Broadway actor and a dancer, but most people, you know, because most people that go into medicine, I think, or at least when I went in, there was a strong contingent of students who were there because their fathers or mothers were doctors and that's what they knew, and they always knew they wanted to be a doctor, and so, you know, they were always on that pathway. And then there were a few of us who had done other things, had, you know, been actors or musicians or dancers. And, you know, there was a handful. I was not the oldest person in my medical school class, although nearly so. You know, most of them were, you know, start med school at 21 and I started at 38. So there's a little bit of a difference there.
Well, for sure. And like, that's a weird, like, cause even when I went to Cleveland State for music therapy, it wasn't like the like I wasn't the oldest, but I was definitely in the middle. I'm like, oh man, there's like babies here. Like,
yeah, there's kids. There's kids here. There's kids in the class. What the heck?
But to like to just to be there and be doing it, I don't know. There's that thing that bug you want to get to the thing, and you know what I mean, like that's super. Have the thing to chase, I think, is so inspiring, and like and in like in your case to get it and to get to the end of it,
and then go right back into music.
Right. Well, yeah. Before I was gonna, have you ever like looked into like music and medicine and like just because of your like kind of cross interest here?
Not really. I mean, I know a lot of physicians play guitar.
Yeah,
a lot of them.
Okay.
You know, I know several who, you know, who play well and play in bands, and you know, it's just part of their you know, things that they love to do as well. So,
is there a doctor band in the works? No.
No, there's not. But there is a doctor band out there. I don't know who they are these days, but there's always one or two.
It's got. I would hope there'd be like it's like punk with a PH, like a PhD punk or something.
That'd be funny.
Or punkadelic like that or something like I don't know. But yeah. So like I guess then during the process of this, right? There's like the call back. And one thing I find interesting, and like, I just noticed it through the last couple records, and I don't know if it's also something. There's like this like this rodeo aspect to it, like this kind of. There's a lot of horses involved.
Yeah, there are,
which is cool. Like now, is that like another interest of yours, or is this just like kind of like a topic, or?
You know, I mean, I grew up out in the country. What is Burnsville, Minnesota? Now was Burnsville, Minnesota then, but it was very much farmland with just starting to become suburbs. And so our little neighborhood, we all had horses. We all rode horses. We rode together. We rode down to the music store down the street and took guitar lessons.
Oh my
Well,
gosh.
we didn't ride on. We could, but but we were often down there, getting snacks and candy as kids, and then seeing the music store was there, and I'm going to take guitar lessons there, and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's kind of like after getting through. Medical training and getting established in my career, and kind of looking at. I mean, really, it was this strong focus in education and finishing medical school and everything. And then there was more of a time to kind of look around and go, okay, well, what else? What else do I like to do? And it was kind of like, then I started to pick up, well, I really like to ride horses. And so I started to go out west and to Arizona and Wyoming and just ride at these ranches and, out in the desert or the mountains, which was great. And I don't know if you've ever been to a dude ranch, but they often have a campfire, and they often have a campfire singer who's a guitar player. And I thought, I'll probably never be in a band again, but it'd be pretty cool to be able to just pick up a guitar and play a song at a campfire. And so I started to teach myself how to do open D tuning and play just some songs in open D. Vestipole, like very, very basic, classics and standards. And then from there, just started to mess around with the tunings and chord progressions. And it was at that point that the movie It Might Get Loud came out. I don't know if you saw that one.
Yeah,
and that was like the catalyst. That was like, why am I not playing guitar more? Oh my God, this is the most awesome thing anybody could do is play guitar. So I should get the guitar out more often. And so, what with an interest in open tuning and just kind of, thinking maybe someday I might sing around a campfire or something, and then It Might Get Loud came out, and then I had about 3 or 4 songs that I was kind of half written, and I called Steve because I knew he would know what to do with them, and he certainly did.
That's awesome. So it's also interesting to kind of come go into like this free, like minimalistic style before like going into med school, and then coming out and then examining the open tunings, which in a way kind of have that.
It fits right in.
Yeah.
It fits right in. Yeah, it did. Yeah, and I still, I don't know if you can tell in some of my material, but that minimalist, dissonant, polyrhythm stuff is still in there. The layered guitars are still in there.
Which is cool, which makes it stick out, in the best way. Like, so are you playing in open tunings on this record?
Yeah, I'm playing in open tunings on probably about half of them. In like 24-hour prayer. I'm looking at my record here. 1, 2, probably about 6 or 7 of them are open. And then the rest are just straight ahead tunings. But no, like at least now that I count, I'm going to count them now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, there's 7 in open tuning.
Okay, because like I play on open tuning a lot as well, and like it's interesting because it's like everything it's kind of gone. Like
yes, it is.
Isn't
it wild? Isn't it wild?
It's beautiful. It makes it like fresh again. It's like, well, I can just like play. Like,
and what tuning do you like? Or do you like a lot of them?
So in my band, I do I run like a 12-string acoustic through like an amp, and like I got a guitar in C, one in dad-gag, and one in F, like a lap steel. But those are kind of different, right? The lap steel thing's like a different approach. But the C and the dad-gag, dad-gad.
Dad-gad?
Yeah, so it's like D-A-D-A-G-A-D. Like I might have added one extra one there.
Yeah, I do dad for shad a lot.
Yeah,
with an F sharp in there.
Yeah. So like that, like open D. Yeah, it's interesting because like that's what open C is like, except for that third, instead of on the G string, it's on the E. It's on the top. So you have like.
Interesting.
Right. It almost makes it easier because that whole like run of strings is the same shape except for the top string. Then you shift. where it's like,
Yeah, because in Dad Fashad, it's like everything is shifted in a different place.
right, and like, but and that's because I really, it's so fun to dive into like these world, but it's like the patterns are always kind of similar where it's just wherever that third pops in, it's like where
Yeah.
everything's cattywampus. But that's awesome. Okay, so like with this record, one thing I want that was to kind of bounce ahead.
Go ahead.
To the record you're putting out, One Hand Up. The tune One Hand Up, there's that sample that goes throughout the whole song. And
Yes.
I'm like, it's interesting because we got kind of the folk aspect of it, but then you got this sample. Where is it? Who is that? Is it you in the sample? Who's that sample?
That is at the rodeo in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, about 5 years ago. And
Yeah.
they, I don't know if you've been to a rodeo, but they often have a mechanical bull
Right.
for the kids to ride on outside, like outside the grandstand. And so they had this bull, and my niece Kamaria, who was 12 at the time, wanted to ride the bull. And so, of course, she rode the bull, and we were, taking video of her. And she rode it for like 30 seconds, but she wouldn't, you're supposed to ride with one hand up.
Yeah.
But she had both hands down on that thing. And so you hear my nephew and myself yelling, one hand up, and Kamaria is going, no! So that's what that loop is. It's just us exhorting her to come on, do it like a cowgirl or like a cowboy, and saying, no. So that's where the song came from.
That's awesome. Like, because like the habit going through the whole thing too. I'm like, who? Like in my mind, I'm like, is this you? It's like because that's kind of.
Well, I'm saying one hand up, but I'm not screaming.
That's so cute. And is she sampled again in the record too?
Her sister is sampled on Saddle Bronc Rider. I was visiting down in Florida, and she gave me a hug goodbye, and she said, "Oh, you smell like Wyoming." And it's like, oh my God, I'm going to have to record this. Just say that one more time there. So there's that, and I don't think I've got another sample in this somewhere. I can't. But yeah, those are the family people.
Oh, that's awesome. And like, so does the family also do music, or are they more into the?
They live in Florida. My older niece, who was on One Hand Up, is now 17, and she is an awesome musician. She just is like, she can play circles around me. She's a drummer, and French horn and marimba, and she is really, really good. And her younger sister, who told me I smelled like Wyoming, is now 12, and she's a very, very good artist. Very, very good artist. And so I'm proud of them for that. And I'm the only one who does well. Kamaria will do music. She'll go far, I would think. I mean, she should, but it's a crapshoot, right?
Right. Well, and part of it is kind of going back to the punk rocking your way through med school, is wanting to do it and like being willing to like.
Yeah, you got to want to do it. Otherwise, otherwise it's
get
torture.
Eggs on the face, know?
Yeah, right. You got to be willing to put yourself out there and fail. And you don't find anything else about yourself if you don't do that.
So with this record, was it always kind of like I guess the goal of it to kind of go from this like kind of folk inspired like sound to this like digital like wild bentness, and then kind of back out again, or
it was like I guess it was a confluence of circumstances is part of it. I mean, 2020 was a kind of a strange year, as we will all remember. And in 2020, before COVID hit, there were plans in the works to go down to Mitch's and mix, and there was a whole different set of songs. Part of them are here and part of them are not released. And then everything fell apart, and, my little musical ecosystem fell apart. Steve was not around. Mitch was not, was not having people down for mixing. The studio that I was recording at was closed. I mean, everything in New York was pretty closed up for a while. And so, it's taken this long to kind of get to a point where things are kind of back on a more or less even keel, but the songs turned out completely different. And part of it, I think, is just the time frame and the variation and the craziness of what went on. And it's like, these songs just were the ones that wanted to come out, because it wasn't like intentional. Okay, I'm going to make this wild record. It's like, no, I'm made these songs, and there's about 6 others that didn't make it on this time out that will come out at some point, but these are the ones that felt like they should come out now. And it was weird to try and sequence them, for those of people who still listen to albums in order, because it's like, well, what leads into what? I mean, they are very, it covers a lot of sonic ground. Is what I like to say.
I think you did a very good job of sequencing them, because it feels like there's like this ebb and flow of like all this sonic territory, but it feels very intentional. And like, I don't, that's my
well, we tried. Definitely tried.
That's the songwriter lens of the artist had chose every line where it's supposed to be. I'm wearing, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But okay, because that like so with the kind of like bounce of Ebbet, like another question, I know it's kind of sidebarring, girl versus guitar.
Yeah.
The narrative on that, is that you?
That's me. That is all me. So yeah, that is, during these past few years, I've developed this interest in 2D animation, hand-drawn animation. And so I've been learning hand-drawn animation, and this song came out of an animation that I kind of roughed out at one point, and now I'm going to animate it. So
that's awesome.
There's going to be an actual story and an animation on this one, probably in the fall. And I'm working in animation, so several of them have some kind of experimental animation aspects to them. Like Slinky 66 will have something, and Day 34 will have something. Girl versus Guitar is crying for an animated, story, and it basically is the story of a girl who goes into a meadow to sing, and she's carefree as can be, and then a bee stings her and she goes into a dream state and ends up flying in the sky having a fight with the bee, who ends up her friend at the end.
That's incredible. Like, that's like, but like, so okay, so when did animation enter your mode of expression?
In about 2019, 2018, I started to feel like, I'd like to be, the first time I went to school, I was trying to be an art major. And then part of the easy reason for me to quit school when I was 18 is like, and go be in a rock band is like, well, what am I going to do as an art major? I don't want to be an art teacher, and I don't really think I'm going to be a famous painter. So I better just go join a rock band. So that's what happened then. So, there's I guess I do have some artistic bents as well that I like to try and work with.
Cool, like to be able to like put it all, funnel all in this one project. Have you?
Well, it's one of those things where I don't know if I'm going to end up with egg in my face or not, but we'll see.
But I mean, okay, in a world where like everything is like digital content, I feel like any visual aspect is going to help. You know what I mean? So like, even if it's egged in the face, I think it's not going to be detrimental. And like, but man, animations get like, are you like? Are you using programs, or are you hand drawing?
Yeah, well, I'm using Photoshop right now. I mean, there's Photoshop. You can do 2D animation, and although it's really
After Effects.
It's not After Effects. I know very well now. There's another program called there's another company called Toon Boom, and they have an animation program, Harmony, which is pretty much industry standard from what I understand in terms of like cartooning and that kind of thing. And I'm going to be learning that over the summer.
Oh, that's all. Are you taking a class or like?
I do continuing education at the School of Visual Arts here in Manhattan, which is a wonderful studio, and they do online Zoom courses in continuing education. So we get people from all over the country and world who are taking classes, which is it's really great to have that kind of community that you can, see what's out there and rely on and get feedback from. So, it's been a great experience, but now comes the point where it's like, I'm just trying to finish stuff up to get it out there. And, it'll probably I have to put my YouTube channel together so I can put my videos on it.
That's exciting. Like I've been trying to learn how to do animations too. And
really?
That's why I ask. That's like,
wow.
And not as much.
Now, how are you
hand-drawn.
doing it?
I've been trying to use After Effects.
After Effects is very deep.
Yeah, like that's the thing I learned. I'm like, oh my gosh, I was just trying to make a crumpled background and a bouncing thing, and like, whoo.
Yeah, no, it's very deep. Yeah, you got to work those keyframes, man.
Yeah. Oh man. And then but I did it all on my own with like YouTube videos. So like I would.
Well, you can do that, but it wouldn't hurt to get just a little background. Like, I don't know if you've seen School of Motion; they seem to have good classes. SVA, yeah, they're online. I've toyed with the idea of maybe taking a class there just to see where I have holes in things, because I'm not in an undergrad thing. I'm just kind of picking and choosing classes that I want to take.
Yeah.
But the School of Visual Arts has the class called All Together Now, where it looks at animation in After Effects and Photoshop, and it can start in the beginning as you want. And the instructors are wonderful. So you should look in. They're starting classes in about 2 weeks, and it's all on Zoom. So, if you've got access, if you've got a Wacom tablet or whatever, and you're able to work with After Effects, you should be fine. So I would say go ahead and give it a look anyway.
I definitely appreciate that. That's like, because like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, when
you find out, I mean, you can get a lot of stuff out of the YouTube ones, and if you do enough YouTube tutorials, you realize that there's a million different ways to do the same thing.
Right.
Right. And so you kind of, at some point you have to go, okay, I'm going to have to figure out how I want to do this, because I can't just follow what this guy is doing all the time. Like he says, and set the glow to 0.4. And it's like, well, why? I don't know. But,
yeah. Well,
but it gives you a starting point. I mean, it does give you a good starting point. There are some great tutorials on YouTube. There really are.
Yeah, for sure. But no, I definitely I want to ask a guy, why does the glow matter? I want that.
Well, yeah, and why that much glow?
Yeah,
because usually they just give you a number and say, yeah, you usually set it to this, and they don't really have enough time or interest or whatever to tell you the whys and wherefores of their particular choices.
Oh, for sure. Because if you look at a YouTube tutorial, it's 2 hours. You go to the 5-minute one.
Well, right, yeah. It's like, wait, this should not take 2 hours to tell me.
But I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm definitely I wrote that.
Yeah, School of Visual Arts and continuing education, School of Visual Arts, Manhattan. I mean, reasonably priced, a lot of teaching. I can't say enough about them. I think they do really great, and they brought me from scratch up to where I feel very comfortable in After Effects. So
very cool. So I guess the kind of where we're at now, are you having a release show for this record? Is there any live performance in the works? No,
that's never been a big part of my planning, just because the records I put out before were while I was actually, practicing medicine. And it was just like, well, let me get the records out and play a few gigs here and there, not enough to ever get good and comfortable at it, and not enough to have a band that was, kind of a steady band that was focused just on this material. So it's kind of been left by the wayside a little bit. I would certainly like to play, but it's just not really been part of what I've been able to do. But things, maybe that'll be the next step. I mean, try and get some videos out there for some video interest, and get some gigs out there too. That would be fun too. That would be a lot of fun. It's been a long time since playing.
Well, I hope that becomes something that I see announced in the near future.
Oh yeah,
Well,
I got to start announcing stuff. Yeah.
So the album comes out June
14th, Flag Day.
Flag Day. There we go. All right.
Flag Day.
One flag up. No, I don't.
Yeah, one flag up. Yes, and the name of it is One Flag Up.
And slowly we're going to see these animations as the summer.
I expect I'll probably have Slinky 66 animation and Day 34 animation up for when the album release, and then you're going to see Girl versus Guitar a little bit farther down the road, and You're Not Where I Am. I mean, about 7 of them will have animations for sure. And a little project for me.
And any you mentioned there was kind of 6 songs in the can. Is there a next project in sight?
There's always a next project in sight.
That's awesome.
There's always a next project in sight. I mean, just like, I feel like, when you've got people that you really like to work with and a situation that you really like working in, I always feel like you should just take advantage of it as much as you can if you're, if you've got stuff to work on. So the stuff keeps working. It's kind of like a continuing pipeline of songs and animations and materials, and hopefully we'll come soon to see what the endpoints are or of some of them. But I planned on continuing writing and doing animations, and then going back into the back catalog and looking to see if I can animate some stuff or make some videos, because that'd be pretty fun.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting. Well, Karen, I really appreciate your time and getting to dive into your career.
Thank you for your time. Wow. Thanks for talking to me.
Yeah, no, this has been awesome. I'm looking forward to that next project and hopefully hearing again from you soon.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds great.
Awesome.
Yo, Spike Spiegel here. You just listened to Zig at the Gig podcast. Keep riding the bebop. See you, Space Cowboy. Bang.